You walk into a boardroom. 12 people seated around mahogany. Eyes scanning, measuring, calculating who holds real authority in this space. And within 30 seconds, something invisible but undeniable happens. The room reorganizes itself around one person. Not the loudest. Not the one with the biggest title. The one who understands something the others don't. The one who learned what Niccolo Machiavelli discovered 5 centuries ago when he wrote the most dangerous manual for power ever created. Most people think The Prince was about ruling kingdoms. It wasn't. It was about ruling minds. And the 3 secrets I'm about to reveal don't require a crown or an army. They require something far more subtle and infinitely more powerful. The ability to make others reorganize their behavior around your presence without them ever realizing you've done it. Because here's what no one tells you about real power. It's not about domination. It's about calibration. The difference between someone who demands attention and someone who commands it without asking. Between someone who fights for respect and someone who receives it as naturally as breathing. Between someone who argues their way to influence and someone whose silence carries more weight than any speech. Machiavelli understood that true control isn't what you do to people. It's what you make them do to themselves. And today, you're going to learn exactly how that works. The first secret is what Machiavelli called the art of strategic restraint. But before I explain what that means, let me ask you something. When was the last time you were in a conversation where someone kept talking and talking, explaining every detail, justifying every point, making sure you understood exactly what they meant? How did that feel? Did you respect them more or less? Most people confuse communication with explanation. They think if they just talk long enough, clearly enough, persuasively enough, they'll win. But Machiavelli knew better. He wrote that men judge more by what they see than what they hear. And what they see when you over-explain is someone who needs their approval, someone who's asking permission to be taken seriously. Strategic restraint is the opposite. It's the recognition that your words gain power, not from their quantity, but from their scarcity. When you speak less, each word carries exponential weight. When you explain less, people lean in closer. When you reveal less, they project more onto your silence. Think about the most powerful people you've encountered. Not the ones trying to prove their power, but the ones who simply possessed it. They didn't fill every silence. They didn't answer every question with paragraphs. They spoke when it mattered, said what was necessary, then stopped. And that stopping, that refusal to continue, created something electric in the room. Tension, curiosity, respect. Here's how strategic restraint works in practice. Someone asks your opinion on a complex issue. Instead of delivering a 10-minute analysis, you pause. You consider. Then you offer one precise observation that cuts to the heart of the matter. Then, silence. Let them digest. Let them wonder what else you're thinking. Let them realize you see layers they haven't considered, or someone challenges your position publicly. Instead of defending yourself point by point, you maintain eye contact, nod slightly, and say something like, "I understand your perspective." Then nothing. No counter-argument, no justification, just acknowledgement followed by stillness. What happens next is fascinating. The challenger suddenly feels the weight of the silence. They often start explaining themselves, softening their position, or looking to others for validation. You've turned their attack into their own discomfort. But strategic restraint isn't just about talking less. It's about revealing less. Machiavelli advised that a prince should be like a deep well. People can see the surface, but they can never fully measure the depth. When people can't completely figure you out, they assign you more capability than you might actually possess. Mystery becomes a multiplier of perception. This doesn't mean being secretive or withdrawn. It means being selective. You share insights, but not your entire thought process. You express opinions, but not your full reasoning. You show competence, but not all your methods. You remain approachable while keeping your deeper self just slightly out of reach. The psychology behind this is simple but profound. Human beings are wired to pay more attention to what they can't fully access. The partially hidden becomes more valuable than the fully revealed. When someone knows everything about you, they stop wondering. When they know most things, but sense there's more beneath the surface, you become fascinating. Strategic restraint also applies to your emotional availability. Most people wear their feelings like billboards: happy, frustrated, excited, disappointed. All of it visible, all of it predictable. But when your emotional state becomes harder to read, people become more careful around you. They can't easily manipulate what they can't easily measure. This brings us to the second dark secret, what Machiavelli called controlled unpredictability. If strategic restraint is about what you don't do, controlled unpredictability is about timing what you do. Most people are creatures of pattern. They respond the same way to similar situations. They have predictable triggers, predictable reactions, predictable behaviors. And once others can predict you, they can prepare for you. They can plan around you. They can manage you. But controlled unpredictability disrupts that calculation. It's not about being erratic or inconsistent. It's about being selectively unexpected in ways that serve your objectives. Sometimes you're warm and engaging. Sometimes you're distant and analytical. Sometimes you respond immediately. Sometimes you take your time. Sometimes you're generous with your attention. Sometimes you're completely unavailable. The key word is controlled. You're not being unpredictable for its own sake. You're calibrating your responses to create specific outcomes. When someone expects you to argue, you agree and redirect. When they expect you to be available, you're mysteriously busy. When they expect you to react emotionally, you become surgically logical. This creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. People become more invested in relationships and interactions where the rewards are unpredictable. They pay closer attention. They work harder to understand your patterns. They become more engaged because they never quite know which version of you they're going to encounter. But here's the sophisticated part. Your unpredictability should feel intentional, not random. People should sense that there's a method to your variations, even if they can't decode it. This creates the impression that you're operating from a deeper strategic understanding than they possess. In meetings, this might mean sometimes being the first to speak and sometimes staying silent until the end. Sometimes asking detailed questions and sometimes accepting proposals without comment. Sometimes pushing back hard on small issues and sometimes letting major concerns slide. The pattern isn't what you do, but that others can't predict what you'll do. In relationships, controlled unpredictability might mean being incredibly present and engaged one day, then politely distant the next. Not out of mood swings or manipulation, but as a conscious choice to prevent others from taking your energy for granted. When people know they can always count on getting your full attention, that attention loses value. When they know your attention is valuable precisely because it's not guaranteed, they treasure it more. The psychological effect is that people start adjusting their behavior to account for your unpredictability. They prepare more carefully before interacting with you. They think twice before making assumptions about your responses. They begin to see you as someone who operates from a position of choice rather than reaction. This is where most people misunderstand power dynamics. They think power is about always being in control of others. But Machiavelli understood that real power is about others never being quite in control of you. When people can't predict your responses, they can't control your responses. And when they can't control your responses, they start deferring to your authority. The third and most dangerous secret is what Machiavelli called the mirror of perception. This is where everything you've learned about strategic restraint and controlled unpredictability culminates into something that borders on psychological artistry. Because the ultimate form of control isn't making people do what you want. It's making them want what you want them to want. The mirror of perception works like this. Instead of trying to change someone's mind through argument or persuasion, you reflect their own desires back to them in a way that serves your objectives. You become a surface that shows them exactly what they need to see to move in your direction. Not through deception, but through precise understanding of what drives them. Most people approach influence backwards. They focus on what they want to communicate rather than what the other person needs to hear. They present their logic, their evidence, their reasoning, hoping it will be compelling. But Machiavelli knew that people aren't convinced by your truth. They're convinced by their own truth, reflected back to them with surgical precision. Here's how this operates in practice. You're in a negotiation. The other party wants to feel like they're getting a great deal. Instead of explaining why your offer is fair, you frame it in terms of the advantage they'll gain. You let them convince themselves by presenting the situation in a way that allows their ego to claim victory. You give them the feeling they were seeking, and they give you the outcome you were seeking. Or you're dealing with someone who's resistant to change. Instead of pushing against their resistance, you acknowledge it. You validate their concerns. You make their hesitation seem wise and thoughtful. Then you present your proposal not as something they should do despite their concerns, but as something that actually addresses those concerns. You turn their resistance into the very reason they should say yes. The mirror of perception requires you to study people the way a master artist studies light. You learn what motivates them, what threatens them, what they value most about their own identity. Then you craft your communications to align with those deep psychological patterns, not to manipulate them into something against their interests, but to help them see how their interests align with your objectives. This is infinitely more sophisticated than simple flattery or people-pleasing. It's about understanding the internal narratives people tell themselves about who they are and what they want. Then positioning yourself and your ideas as consistent with those narratives. When someone feels like you truly understand them, they naturally begin to trust your judgment about other things. But there's a darker edge to this technique. The mirror of perception also means controlling how others see themselves when they're around you. Through subtle feedback, through the questions you ask, through what you notice and what you ignore, you shape their self-perception in real time. Someone walks into your presence feeling confident. Through your body language, your responses, your level of engagement, you can either reinforce that confidence or quietly undermine it, not through insult or criticism, but through calibrated indifference, through responding to their energy with slightly less energy than they're giving you, through treating their excitement as ordinary, their insights as expected, their presence as unremarkable. Conversely, when someone enters feeling uncertain or defensive, you can elevate their self-perception. Through focused attention, through treating their contributions as valuable, through responding to their ideas with genuine consideration. You make them feel more capable, more important, more worthy of respect than they felt before encountering you. The psychological principle at work is that people's behavior is largely determined by how they see themselves in the moment. Change how they see themselves, and you change how they behave. And since you control many of the environmental cues that shape self-perception, you possess tremendous influence over the version of themselves that people bring to their interactions with you. This is why some people seem to bring out the best in others, while different people bring out the worst. It's not accidental. It's the result of thousands of microsignals that either elevate or diminish how people feel about themselves in that relationship. And once you understand this dynamic, you can use it strategically. In a business context, this might mean making key decision makers feel brilliant when they agree with your recommendations and slightly uncertain when they resist them. Not through obvious manipulation, but through the subtle art of reflection. When they align with your thinking, you engage more fully, ask deeper questions, treat their insights as profound. When they diverge, you remain polite, but less animated, less impressed, less invested in the conversation. Over time, they begin to associate feeling smart and important with agreeing with you. Not because you've tricked them, but because you've created an environment where their best self emerges when they're aligned with your objectives. The mirror shows them a version of themselves they prefer, and that version happens to see things your way. The most advanced practitioners of this technique can make people feel like they're discovering insights on their own, when in reality, those insights are being carefully guided. Through the questions you ask, the information you provide, the options you present, you create a path of logic that leads exactly where you want them to go. But the path feels like their own discovery, their own reasoning, their own conclusion. This requires patience. It requires restraint. It requires the discipline to let others feel ownership of ideas that you planted. But when executed properly, it creates the deepest form of influence possible. People defend decisions they feel they made independently far more fiercely than decisions they feel were imposed on them. The three secrets work together like instruments in an orchestra. Strategic restraint creates the space for others to project their assumptions onto you. Controlled unpredictability keeps them from developing strategies to manage you. And the mirror of perception ensures that what they project serves your objectives rather than theirs. But here's what separates the masters from the amateurs. These techniques require you to think several moves ahead. Like chess, every action creates reactions that create further reactions. The person who can see and plan for those chain reactions possesses an almost unfair advantage over those who can only see the immediate move. When you master these three dark secrets, something profound happens. You stop reacting to rooms and start shaping them. You stop hoping for influence and start commanding it. You stop asking for respect and start receiving it as your natural due. But there's a final element that Machiavelli understood better than anyone. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one who threatens. It's the one who doesn't need to. The one whose very presence suggests capabilities that others can sense, but never fully measure. This is what separates temporary manipulation from lasting authority. Manipulation requires constant effort. You have to keep pushing, keep convincing, keep managing perceptions. But when you embody these principles, they become effortless extensions of who you are. People adjust to you automatically because your energy demands it. Watch what happens in your next meeting. Notice who speaks first, who interrupts whom, who gets listened to when they finally talk. Notice whose ideas get built upon and whose get politely ignored. Notice who controls the pace and who follows it. You'll start seeing the invisible architecture of power that exists in every human interaction. Most people stumble through these dynamics unconsciously. They react instead of calibrate. They hope instead of orchestrate. They explain instead of command. But once you understand how rooms really work, how minds really respond, how authority really flows, you can't unsee it. And more importantly, you can't return to operating without it. The boardroom I described at the beginning, that person who reorganized the entire space around their presence, they weren't born with some mystical charisma. They simply understood what you now understand. That real power isn't about what you say or do. It's about what others feel compelled to say and do when you're present. Strategic restraint makes them lean in. Controlled unpredictability keeps them guessing. The mirror of perception makes them see themselves through your lens. Together, these create something that transcends ordinary influence. They create gravitational pull, an invisible force that draws others into orbit around your objectives. Machiavelli wrote, "The prince not to create tyrants, but to reveal truth." The truth that power dynamics exist, whether we acknowledge them or not. The truth that some people will always understand these dynamics better than others. The truth that in a world where influence matters, ignorance isn't innocence. It's vulnerability. Every room you enter from now on is an opportunity to practice. Every conversation is a chance to calibrate. Every interaction is a moment to choose between reactive patterns and strategic presence. The question isn't whether you'll use power. The question is whether you'll use it consciously or unconsciously, skillfully or clumsily, effectively or wastefully. But remember this above all. These secrets work because they're based on fundamental truths about human psychology. People do respond more to what they can't fully access. They are more influenced by their own discoveries than by your arguments. They do adjust their behavior around those who seem to operate from deeper knowledge. The choice is yours. You can continue hoping that good work speaks for itself, that fairness prevails, that the best ideas naturally rise to the top. Or you can accept that influence is a skill like any other, one that can be learned, practiced, and mastered. Machiavelli's dark secrets aren't about becoming someone you're not. They're about becoming someone you already have the potential to be. Someone who understands that in a world of competing interests and limited attention, the most ethical thing you can do is ensure that your voice carries the weight it deserves. The room is waiting. The question is whether you'll walk in as someone who hopes to be heard, or someone who knows they will be. The difference isn't in your words. It's in your understanding of what makes words matter. And now you possess that understanding. Use it wisely.